Alrighty, here we are. Time for the spookiest story of them all. It's time for a scare, ladies and gentlemen. Family Guy Evil MOV File. Family Die by BarbaraFan07. Dear reader, I am typing this as a ghost. Everything around me is dark and cold. Floating around me are bunches of ones and zeros. Hold on, This is creepypasta? Yeah, it's creepypasta time. I think I can safely say ghosts are real now that I am one, and I appear to be inside of a computer. But I don't think it was of my own doing. Somehow, my ghost was put in this device, and the more I monologue to myself, the more it's being projected onto an email in this computer. Making myself to move elsewhere doesn't let me type the rest of this email. So eventually, when I get it out, I'll come back to this email and tell you what happened. This sure is weird. It's like I'm being watched. Update. What happened was seriously so crazy. I have to get into it immediately. Right now, I'm safe and sound. But the journey I went through was mind-boggling. Just a few days back, I awoke myself from my strange subconscious state to find myself on the cold, hard ground, much like the one that I previously passed out on. Picking myself up, I found that I was completely devoid of the blood wounds that ruptured my skin. Had someone healed me? Making sense of my surroundings, spelt like cents, as in like pennies, I put one foot in front of the other and touched the wall next to me. Of course, I recognized it instantly. I was back at my house, having woke up next to my iconic iconic cartoon merchandise wall. A brick wall in my bedroom with all sorts of merchandise on each shelf. When I saw my bed, I began to wonder if this all had just been a heckin' bad dream. It would seem that all is normal, but my friend and dear viewers felt like the animal deer. Nothing could be further from the truth. I took a step outside to read my morning paper, and read quite the troubling headline. Shootout at nearby bar, 3 left injured, 1 dead. As I dropped my paper to drink my coffee, I clumsily spilled it onto the table, and much into my belongings. "Drat!" I yelled. But as some of the spill landed onto newspaper, I began to notice something that made my head turn. The coffee had erased some of the ink on the paper, showing the front news image as not that of a regular bar, but one that looked a little two-dimensional. And right there, I saw it on the image. The bar is now called The Drunken Clam. And while the average normie would be blind to recognize this reference, a cartoon craziac such as myself would know that this is an iconic location in the hit Seth MacFarlane cartoon, Family Guy. Perhaps my insane escapades with those freaking cartoons hadn't ended. I'm crying, this is terrifying. Before I could realize the implications of this discovery, I was bonked on top of the head. Youch! And I was put out cold again. I woke up once more. This time, kind of miffed. I was tired of waking up. Isn't there a better way to transition to the next scene, I wondered? But as my vision came to, I realized my surroundings were not that of one that sees reality. The room was empty, with a white floor and walls with blue whiting. However, everything looked flat in color and dimension, and an outline in a line thickness that I unmistakably knew was that of Family Guy. I wasn't just watching a cartoon anymore. I was in one. Just over from behind me, I heard the signature sound of piano keys tapping away. Well, how the place looked like a stage. I must have been in the intro segment of Family Guy, the part where they play the theme song. But as I turned, it wasn't Lois Griffin playing the piano. It was a familiar face. They began to sing in a gruff voice to the background music. "As it seems to today, that all you see is violence in movies. And that's all from me." The piano was tossed from its place in my direction. I quickly dodged it as it struck the ground next to me, with just a thunderous thud, shattering into a billion itty-bitty pieces. What kind of inhuman monster could possess that strength? I thought. It was the boss. I am the boss. He sauntered his way down the steps, and every inch of my body tensed, and got my legs a-running once more. Even though he was not armed from what it looketh like, I wasn't gonna mess with a dude who throws pianos. "What do you want from me?" I yelled while looking back at him while running. But he proceeded to suddenly teleport next to me and made me flinch of fear. I scampered my way all the way to what looked like a doorway, only to find out that there was no floor. If this was a Looney Tunes cartoon, I would have walked in the air comically before noticing, and then following by a delayed time period. Where is Lois? No clue. But gravity was not up for jokes. I fell straight down. I could see that I was falling through the sky and through the clouds. I could see it. I was entering the world of Family Guy, crashing through the roof of the Griffin family household. I surprisingly took no damage, not even winding up in the iconic Predator Griffin falling down the stairs pose. As I got up, I heard a shrill sound. "Ah, it's some kind of realistic UFO! It crashed through the ceiling!" said Chris Griffin. "Now how could— oh my goodness, it's an alien! It looks so crusty and hyper-realistic!" screamed Lois, pointing at me in disbelief. Having had witnessed cartoon families turn dark and evil twice now, I couldn't waste time finding cover before they could enact some kind of evil. Yo, Earl, this is not the right time. I'm reading a shitty creepypasta. Like an intentionally really shitty creepypasta. The fishing does continue, though. Chris Griffin is Christ Griffin, maybe. I couldn't waste any time finding cover before they could enact some kind of evil scheme. I ran into the dining room and leapt onto the table before grabbing the ceiling chandelier. I spun around it and drop-kicked Lois in self-defense. I hear a voice from upstairs. "What's going on? I got a gun and I'm not afraid to use it," Peter Griffin said as he trotted down the steps and began to load the gun with malicious intent. Hearing such words, I had no idea if a cartoon gun would hurt me, but I was in no mood to find out. I bolted into the nearby cupboard and hid. Peter Griffin laughed. "Come out wherever you are." He didn't even ask if Lois was okay. This must have been one of the later season episodes. But all of a sudden, there was a knock at the door. Peter Griffin answered it, and he modestly opened. "Oh my god, is that the boss?" he said. "You're right," the boss said. "Say, this reminds me of the time I crucified you and your entire family among the smoldering embers." "Huh?" Peter said. I was then transported to a horrific cutaway gag, where amidst the sky and red charred ground, the entire Griffin family were crucified and weeping in agony. Finding myself crouched behind a rock, this literally becomes illegible for a second. Finding myself behind a rock, I shivered in fear so much that my bones were— that's a whole run-on sentence. Rattling like dice in the hands of a seizuring casino player. The boss turned his head to me and said, "As for you," in a very menacing tone. I jumped up and skedaddled in no given direction, just as long as I ran out of there. The boss had a different face than the one from before. It was terrifying, with evil eyebrows and glowing red eyes that seemed to look straight into your soul. I dashed through the horrific sight, gaining awareness of my surroundings, seeing the one blue and vibrant place of Quahog be reduced to charred nothingness. But amidst the barren wasteland, I could see a very distinct landmark from the show. The Drunken Clam! It was my only place I could hide in. As I quickly opened the front doors and slammed them behind me, a voice cried out from the distance. Who could it be? None other than the iconic sound of Cleveland Brown! He spoke to me and said, "Over here." I leaned in curiosity. He showed me a hiding spot. It was his, behind the place in the bar where they serve drinks. Behind the place in the bar where they serve drinks. Tucked behind the counter of the bar, I stayed perfectly still and crouched next to Cleveland while the boss, from what I heard, didn't even bother to open the glass doors. A loud shatter resounded as he broke into the itty-bitty bits. "Come on, make this entertaining for me. We aren't finished just yet, buddy. After all, what is it? What good is it for the people watching? The audience needs more brutality." "Take this, you jar-headed brute," Cleveland yelled as he lunged over the counter of a bottle of beer and smashed it over the boss's head. But he was so strong it did nothing. He just grabbed Cleveland by the shirt with his one arm. raised him up and threw him through the roof of the building. Cleveland was launched into the sky, turning into a fireball that evaporated before my very eyes. It was so horrid. The guy had his own show and everything. As I was looking up through the hole in the roof above me, my eyes gazed on a sight that would be the key to my escape. This world that I found myself in was not of its own make. Instead of clouds, there was none, and instead of the sky, atomized. Instead of the sky, it looked like I was staring straight through a screen, because I was looking through a big screen to the outside world. It can't be, I thought to myself. And then I looked closer. My bloodied handprint was marked on the screen, and from what else I saw, it was that place that I died at. Unbelievable! But this made me realize something that may have saved my life. If this show was just fake, and that the boss could operate under its rules, perhaps I could too. The boss lifted up the entire counter of his strong arms, but as he looked at me, I quickly blurted out the words, "Wow, this almost reminds me of that time you were about to be hit by a tractor," I yelled. And a huge sheet of paper slapped over me between me and the boss. On the other side, I could only assume this was the cutaway gag, as a loud engine of a tractor sounded off. The power of cutaway gags was on my side. I ran a distance before hearing the sound of the tractor crumple up and bend like it was a tin can. Breaking through the paper, the boss held the remains of the tractor tire in his hands, his face looking mad as the devil himself. I quickly began to exclaim more cutaways. "This reminds me of when you were out at sea. This reminds me of that time you went to Yale University. This reminds me when you crashed into a mail truck." Over and over, the cutaways layered on top of themselves. Wailing the boss away from me, giving me time to sprint. But he was very mad, and despite my best efforts, he kept breaking through faster and faster. "I may be in the show with you now, but don't think I'll follow the rules. It's time for you to die," he said. Using my quick wits, I looked at the surrounding environment and found a forlorn airport. There's a lot of planes parked on the runway, and so I hurriedly scamper-renoed into one and pressed the fly button. The plane took off, and the boss was literally already on its tail. He climbed the roof and broke through, and so I grabbed my parachute conveniently next to me and jumped out through the hole he just made as the air launched me out. Cutaway purgatory. As I looked down and I was in midair, I saw that the boss had grabbed my leg. "You're not getting away from you little punk," he screamed as the wind around us was blasting. However, his grasp was soon relinquished when a mighty force seemingly manifested out of nowhere. Why did you put Spooktune in the spooky playlist, SB? Oh god. However, his grasp was soon relinquished when a mighty force seemingly manifested out of nowhere, flying down and hitting the boss on the head hard. Enough was a club for him to let go and be sent falling back into the plane. As the air forced me out into the sky, I saw him, my savior. It was Bam Bam once more? The Titanic Stone Age infant grabbed me as well, as I hurled me high into the sky at such a velocity that my parachute fell off. Having no time to realize what was going on, I couldn't stop flying up, and I saw the plane quickly plummet back to the ground and explode. As I kept soaring, I reached the hole that Cleveland's body had made in the sky. Covered with smoke and charred gore, I grabbed onto the edge and flung myself out. But quick to my disappointment, I wasn't on the outside of the screen. I was in some space in between the Family Guy show and the screen of the computer it was on. This was the computer desktop. Walking around the desktop behind me was the place I emerged from, the Family Guy world, or what was shown to me was an MOV file being played on a Windows media player at only half screen. It was called Family Die instead, but also next to me was various bottom tabs that had yet to me opened. I tapped them, and to my surprise, they worked like a mouse click. Is when I tapped the tab labeled as a notepad that I did see something truly insidious. Operation Pyramid Scheme. List of entertainment extraordinaires that need to be taken to my torture dungeon and replaced with a body double. Number 92, Joseph Barbera, Flintstones creator, executed in parentheses. Number 93, Matt Groening, Simpsons creator, executed in parentheses. Seth MacFarlane, Family Guy creator, in parentheses, pending. There were countless more on the list. Chuck Jones, Rebecca Sugar, Jim Davis. Perhaps this is some kind of planned assassination of cartoon makers? It was so bizarre and scary. What was this boss planning? If it had went after beloved cartoon producers, what would it accomplish? These thoughts went through my head just as I heard the sound. And then there's an image link attached. This image is attached. This image is attached. With a loud thud, a huge footstep smashed into the ground. It was, of course, the boss. He had reclaimed my soul. Shivers ran up my back and my teeth, chattered for a mile a minute. I was very sure this was the end of me. But to my surprise, the boss began to conveniently monologue. So you found it. That sure is a mighty surprise. Maybe I should have been more careful. Let me explain something to you while you're here. It's not like you're going anywhere. That little list you saw was my kill list. Capitalized, of course. Of course, as I mentioned, I plan to take over the entire entertainment industry. So I gotta shoot for the stars, knock down a few pegs. Some of the folks had a courtesy of meeting me in my base of operations. Just like you. And wouldn't you know it, you get to be the guest star of my new horrifying demented reaction videos. Doesn't that sound great? I began to open my mouth. Don't answer that, he said. Either ways, plural, you have overstepped your boundaries. I have simply just put your soul inside that MOV file for one thing, and one thing only. That is, to entertain my audience for my next videos. So if it isn't any trouble... With a snap of his fingers, the boss teleported me back to the Family Guy MOV file that I was in before. But this time I was tied up to a railroad, in the middle of what was once Quahog, still burning like the fires of hell. I screamed and shouted, and my eyes bulged out of my head when I saw a train heading to my direction on the tracks. Most irritatingly of all, I had a huge skull of brine grifferin on the front, and in its nose had a huge buzzsaw ready to cut me in half. The boss levitated next to me, triumphantly laughing maniacally, his teeth turning sharp razor-like blades and his voice turning into deep monstrous. Just when it seemed like I was in for some painful business, the skies above me turned gray. Clouds formed overhead. Was this my signal to a grim demise, or was it forthcoming of a miracle? Bam Bam descended from the sky, his white hair flowing in the wind, his shoulders donning a pair of white angel wings, and most surprisingly, a halo around his head. Thunder and lightning began to roll in, and soon began downpour. Is this rain? The boss said. It's a storm, Bam Bam replied. In an instant, Bam Bam telepathically lifted hundreds of boulders from the ground, and began to rapidly pelt the boss with a fury of over 1,000 punches. He was fighting like a true Super Saiyan from Dragon Ball Z. Ever determined, Bam Bam pulled another trick up from his sleeve and began to summon the spirits of all the dead Family Guy characters from before. Lois, Chris, Brian, and even Peter all joined forces as a family and began to restrain the boss's arms and legs. From the grave also came Stewie's ghost, which had an evil, malicious-looking smile and evil-looking eyes. Much like the uncanny gaze of Jeff the Killer, Stewie leapt forward, 2 words, and bit the top of the boss's face with sharp teeth as he yelled in anger. For the first time ever, though the boss was relentless, he began to stagger as more and more boulders slammed into him. It was soon subdued when a massive part of the group was uprooted and slammed down upon him. Seemingly defeated, the boss made no attempt to rise as Bam Bam fluttered down beside me and magically cut the ropes tying me up. I stood up and thanked him, shaking his hand excitedly. The boss made no attempt to rise as Bam Bam fluttered down beside me, but Bam Bam spoke again. You don't need to do anything. I've done all I can to protect you. However, his voice, I noticed all this time, was muffled, and his mouth wasn't moving. Although he was Bam Bam, he was much larger than the character was size-wise. He was even bulkier. almost like he was in a costume. That's when I realized, but in order to know who was speaking under that muffled costume head, I asked Bam Bam to take his head off. I was shocked. Bam Bam was Joseph Barbera in a suit this entire time? I was so confused. But how is this possible? I sputtered. Listen, this is going to sound very bizarre, but much like how he trapped you in the video file, he trapped me in all of those tapes and in here. He not wanted only to kill the competition, but to make them suffer in media of their own making. The boss is a very cruel man, but a very busy one too. He lost track of me, so I hid in this costume and did everything I could to protect you. Joseph put his hand on my shoulder, and I looked up to him. Oh my god, but why would you want to protect me? You don't even know me. On the contrary, you don't know this because you never got the chance to find out. But I, Joseph Barbera, am your long-lost uncle. What? I yelled. Listen, there's no time to explain. Take these. He pulled off the angel wings on his costume and wrapped them around my shoulders. Here in the cartoon world, things run on cartoon logic. Fly, my child. Fly. Fly far away from this wretched place. My cartoon prop angel wings flapped up and down at my command, and I was graced with the ability to flight. Yes, I can finally fly out of this place, and hopefully reach the screen, sealing me and this computer away from the rest of the world. But, dear viewer, a red glow came from behind the pile of rocks, behind Joseph, and with a bang they exploded violently into smaller, tinier rocks. With a snap of his fingers, the boss made lightning disappear like a magic trick. As skeletal eyes burst from the ground and dragged the souls of the Family Guy cast into the ground, presumably to hell. It's actually funny, he said, that you'd think I'd let you get the upper hand. As he reached out and grabbed Joseph by the neck, gripping him tightly and strangling him. Both of the boss's hands began to burn a bright orange flame, as his eyes glowed redder than ever. He laughed maniacally, with a wicked, toothy grin, as Joseph screamed in agony. You really thought you could fool me? I am God, after all. That I am. I was just waiting for you to let your guard down, so I could kill you. It's foolish to think that I am tied down by the laws of this world. I made it, and I made you. Everybody and everything. It's time to be reduced and unmade. The boss shouted every word of this, as he slowly brought his upper palm. Bro, this shit's putting me to sleep. Coated in fire. He grabbed his face, setting it ablaze as he screamed and burning away every last bit of flesh and bone until it was ash and dust. However, I was already on my way to fly away, as it was too late to save this man. The man I thought was Bam Bam and protected me all this time was actually a long-lost relative. Well, that's life, I suppose. I flew away as fast as I could, exiting the sky, and flying out of the hole that it still remained in. Finally, I had reached the beyond, and with one big, mighty fist punch, I broke the computer screen that contained me, and made it out to the other side. Back is normal. Back to my normal size, back to my flesh and blood. I was free. Then I walked over to the computer, and I was in the email that I mentioned earlier. To my email address to serve as the cool prologue for the story. Cool, isn't it? Hold on a minute, damn it! As I heard the boss scream from inside the computer, he suddenly appeared in front of me, his hand still emanating smoke. This ain't how it's supposed to go, you know. I can't believe I let you escape like that. I mean, like, I'm omnipresent. I should have seen it coming. But now I guess it's kind of pointless. Now we went off script. My camera and editing crew can always re-edit the footage, but that takes time. Well, screw it. Does that mean I get the skedaddle on out of here? I said to him. The boss's face was disgruntled. He stood there awkwardly for several moments. Like hell you are. We're off camera, so I don't gotta play by the rules no more. He shouted before stancing himself up and charging. The chase had begun anew. In an instant, I began to gather my surroundings from where I left off. I saw the blood trail I left behind before my death, and knew to follow in the opposite direction. Running down an adjacent hallway, the ceiling lights grew sparser as the grayness began to light up. I could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. It was the exit to the building. I ran past a bunch of other supplies. The part of the building looked like a storage area, but there were some computers laying around. The boss was still in hot pursuit, as he stopped in his tracks and held out his hand at one of the monitors. "Go, my Smile Dog," he yelled. And wouldn't you know it, Smile Dog emerged from a computer screen. Oh my god, Smile Dog, no way. I just realized what that was. "Hey there, nice doggy," I said worriedly and tried slowly moving back. "No use in escaping. Now get over there and throw that dog a bone, stupid," the boss yelled, angry and impatient that I wasn't in Smile Dog apostrophe IS sharp teeth. His anger just about saved me, as in an effort to push me to Smile Dog with a flying kung fu kick that they do in those Jackie Chan movies. I swiftly dodged and sent the boss's left foot square into Smile Dog's chest, knocking him back with tremendous force and breaking the exit door open. I used the space between me and the boss to expertly slink past him and exit, finding myself running across a mostly empty parking lot. He stayed right on my trail. Each time one strike missed, they hit the building wall next to me and shattered them. Those walls are made of concrete or something, and he broke them just like that. Even if he got his hands on me, I'd be absolutely toast. Sliding underneath his wild arms, I evaded the boss by juking him and running in a zigzag motion. However, he began to get the better of me when he kept teleporting in my way, making me very close to tripping. However, in the pinch, I put some distance and clambered into a car. I started the ignition and began to back up and saw the boss's face, more angrier than before. Just then, the Smile Dog got up, it barked, and leapt straight through the windshield. I slammed the brake and began to spun out. But the car suddenly stopped. The boss grabbed the back of it to keep from moving. "No! What are you doing? That's my car! My favorite one! I put it here for convenience and everything!" He yelled, really mad this time. He then appeared at the front of it to grab Smile Dog and throw him away. He proceeded to curb stomp Smile Dog, causing him to evaporate into a red mist. I also quickly got out of the car too, ready to be chased again, seething with bloodshot eyes, which were also hyper-realistic. The boss roundhouse spin kicked the car in my general direction. He missed, but the explosion was close enough to knock me to my feet. As the flames surrounded both of us, and shards of metal blew in the wind, Boss stared down at me, an evil red aura increasing around him, like he was powering up some sort of malicious energy. Then it stopped. "Just beat it," he said, and let out a sigh. He threw up his hands, and the fire around us disappeared. "You know, I might be God, and can live forever and stuff, but that doesn't mean we don't get our midlife crises of our own," he said as he crossed his arms and furrowed his brow, just as I began to turn and leave. "What do you mean?" I said. "Is that why you did all this, just to have something to do?" "Well, that's part of it, yeah. I mainly just want to scam people and cash on the newest trend in the evil, scummiest way I know. But it's clear that this project might be a waste of time and resources," he said. "After everything I saw, and everything I've been through, it'd be wrong not to leave with the boss with some strong final words. In case he ever decided to come back and kidnap me again, for his evil plans. If he remained unhappy, he might try to go through with taking over the cartoon industry. As a Goody Two Shoes Toon fan, I could not just let this slide. You know, the boss, while you're a spooky and scary individual, would it not be cool to dedicate your efforts and your editing team to something else?" What does that mean?" the boss responded. "Well, you clearly put a lot of effort into this whole plan. And with how you're chasing me back there, you're pretty cool. Although it's not just what you put in yourself. Those evil versions of the Flintstones and Simpsons are pretty disturbing, in a good way," I said, trying to appeal to his ego. He seemed to agree. I continued on. "Perhaps, maybe instead of hunting down and killing people, why don't you hire actors?" "Hire actors?" the boss said, perplexed. "Yeah, just like they do in the TV shows. That could be a good change." Well, I'd sooner relinquish a fraction of my immeasurable godly powers than bother to produce a TV show. But the idea of hiring no-name actors to kill them instead of kidnapping celebrities does sound tempting. Sure would keep the shadow government from annoying me. That's why I employed the FBI. Gotta know higher-ups to fight higher-ups. Would keep the what? I said. Don't worry about that. Maybe Project Pyramid Scheme was a bust. Or maybe it wasn't. The point is, I'm honestly pretty bored of creepypastas. They went out of style years ago. There's one thing I can thank a mortal for having is the ability to survive against me for this long. The boss laughed and then pointed at me directly. But just don't come back, or I'll kill you when I catch you next time. With that, I figured it was my cue to walk away. I started to feel at ease, but wondered where I was in order to get back home. As I walked away and pulled my phone out to call an Uber, when it arrived by the road, I jumped to my surprise. But the boss was there as my driver. Now listen, I'll take you to your house, but just before you do, here's my business card. If you ever get any new info about my future movies, you'll be a part of my test screening audience. It's just optional, but just now I came up with a bunch of fun scenarios that people will like, or at least that they'll like better. I was about to shout, why would I want anything to do with you after you killed me? Or tried to kill me. But I was too intimidated and just took the card. I looked down at the card to read it, and it was signed with a name, but it was too smudged and made out of weird symbols to make out. It was like it was written by some Lovecraftian horror. Ah, my mistake. I forgot to write my name in English. You're not accustomed to this kind of stuff, he said, once he noticed the writing. What should I call you then? The name's Dale Johnson. We're done here. With an instant, he snapped his fingers and I miraculously appeared back at home on my couch in front of my TV. After so much stress and so much anxiety and so much terror, I was back in my place. The sun was bright. It was a beautiful day. The birds chirping, the fresh smell of grass outside. Everything looked just as it should. Nothing felt fake. There was no more illusion. I pinched myself several times, just to make sure. But just to be extra sure, I immediately gathered all my Flintstones, Simpsons, and Family Guy merch in my bedroom, and hauled them out in boxes to my front porch. I lit a match and proceeded to burn every last plushie, doll, DVD, and memorabilia. I closed my eyes and waited for something to happen. And it didn't. I jumped up and yelled, "Hallelujah!" and danced in the street. The neighbors must have thought I was crazy, but I didn't care. This had surely been a creepypasta. That's how they ended it. I shit you not. This had surely been a creepypasta. Oh my god. This is insane. Actually insane.